Geometric silence. How architectural minimalist framing redefines our perception of urban space. Cities are designed to be busy. They are filled with traffic, advertisements, crowds, noise, and endless movement. Every surface seems to compete for our attention. Yet through the lens of a camera, something remarkable can happen. A photographer can remove the chaos. A crowded city can become silent. A functional building can become a work of abstract art. This transformation begins with a simple act of exclusion. By carefully choosing what remains inside the frame, and what is left outside, a photographer can strip urban space down to its most fundamental elements: lines, shadows, shapes, and light. The result is what we might call geometric silence, a visual language where architecture stops functioning as a building and begins functioning as an idea. Consider a concrete wall intersecting with a deep shadow. In everyday life, we barely notice it. It is simply part of the city's infrastructure. But isolate that intersection within a minimalist frame, and suddenly the image changes. The wall becomes a geometric plane. The shadow becomes a sculptural form. The photograph no longer documents a location. It invites contemplation. This shift reveals something fascinating about human perception. We do not simply see space. We interpret it. Our brains constantly search for meaning, patterns, and emotional signals within our environment. When visual clutter is removed, those patterns become more powerful. A single diagonal line can create tension. A perfect square can evoke stability. A vast empty area can produce feelings of solitude, freedom, or even unease. Minimalist architectural photography uses these psychological responses deliberately. The absence of information becomes as important as the information itself. Empty space begins to speak. Silence becomes a visual element. This is why minimalist images often feel strangely calming. Without distractions, the mind slows down. Instead of processing hundreds of visual details, it focuses on relationships between shapes, shadows, and proportions. The photograph becomes less about a building and more about perception itself. Yet this process also raises an intriguing question. What happens when we remove so much information that a city becomes unrecognizable? A staircase becomes a triangle. A skyscraper becomes a series of rectangles. A shadow becomes a black void. At what point does architecture stop being architecture and become abstraction? Perhaps that is precisely the purpose. Minimalist framing encourages us to see familiar environments with fresh eyes. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The overlooked becomes significant. The functional becomes poetic. A parking garage can resemble a modern sculpture. A concrete facade can feel like a meditation on light. A narrow gap between two buildings can become a study of balance and emptiness. In this way, the camera is not merely recording urban space. It is redefining it. The photographer becomes an editor of reality, revealing hidden visual harmonies that most people pass by every day. The city remains unchanged, yet our perception of it changes completely. Ultimately, geometric silence teaches us that architecture is more than utility. Buildings are not simply places where people work, live, or travel. They are collections of forms that shape our emotions and influence our experience of the world. By removing distraction and embracing minimalist framing, we encounter urban space in its purest form. A dialogue between light and shadow, between presence and absence, between structure and void, and within that silence, we often discover that the city has been speaking all along. We were simply too distracted to hear it.